They say marriage is in sickness and in health. But as I lay in that ICU bed, struggling to breathe, my husband of 15 years didn't hold my hand. He handed me a legal folder. It wasn't my medical charts, it was a divorce settlement. Mark looked at me with cold, unfamiliar eyes and told me he couldn't waste his best years being a caretaker for a ghost. He said I was a liability. He said he deserved a life. But as the door closed behind him, I heard a whisper from the hallway. It was my cousin, Ava, the woman I had housed, fed, and treated like a sister when she had nothing. She wasn't just there to comfort him. She was there to claim the one thing I had left that she needed to survive: my kidney. They thought I was too sedated to hear. They thought I was too broken to fight back. They were standing over my dying body, plotting to harvest my organs for his mistress before the divorce papers even hit the court. They forgot that before I was a wife, I was a senior litigator who never lost a case. They were waiting for me to close my eyes forever. Instead, I'm about to open a window into their darkest secrets and audit every cent they ever stole from my heart. Get ready, because the doctor is out and the judge is in. The sound of their laughter in the hallway was the only medicine I needed. It burned through the fog of the sedatives, a cold, sharp fire that cleared my mind for the first time in weeks. I waited until their footsteps faded, until the hospital wing settled into that heavy, oppressive silence of the late-night shift. My hands were shaking, a side effect of the dialysis, but my mind was a steel trap. I reached for the burner phone Nurse Maya had hidden in my pillowcase. "Frank," I whispered when he picked up on the first ring. "It's time. I don't want a standard audit. I want a forensic sweep of every offshore account, every shell company, and every wire transfer Mark has authorized in the last 24 months. He's been funneling my inheritance into a company called Ava Star Holdings. I want it dismantled, piece by piece." Over the next few days, I played the part of the dying victim to perfection. When Mark came in, I let my eyes wander. I let my voice trail off. I made him believe the ghost was fading away. He would sit there, pretending to read the news, but I saw his eyes darting to my medical monitors, silently rooting for my heart rate to drop. He brought in his lawyer every morning, pushing the medical proxy toward me. "Sarah, it's just to ensure Ava can get the treatment she needs if you pass," he'd say, his voice dripping with fake concern. "It's your legacy, honey, a final act of grace." I would just nod weakly and tell him my vision was too blurred to sign. I was buying time. I needed Frank to find the kill switch, the one legal document Mark had overlooked in his haste to replace me. And then, Frank found it. A premarital trust agreement I had drafted 10 years ago, hidden deep within our estate papers. It stated that in the event of proven marital infidelity or financial fraud, Mark would be stripped of every asset, including the firm I had built for him. But I didn't just want his money. I wanted to see the look on his face when he realized that the woman he was trying to harvest was the one who held his leash. I watched through the crack in my door as Mark and Ava shared a celebratory drink in the waiting room, clinking plastic cups filled with cheap wine, toasted to my inevitable end. They thought the operating room would be my grave. They didn't realize it was actually going to be their prison. The surgery was scheduled for Thursday morning. 48 hours. That was all the time I had to finish the audit and set the stage for the ultimate cross-examination. I wasn't just fighting for my life anymore. I was fighting for the satisfaction of watching their empire crumble. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in psychological warfare, and for the first time in my life, I was the lead actress in a play I hadn't written. Mark and Ava were so blinded by their own reflected glory that they didn't notice the sharpened blade. I was hiding under my hospital gown. Every time the door creaked open, I would let my head loll to the side, my eyes glazed, my breath coming in shallow, ragged hitches. I wanted them to see a corpse. I wanted them to feel so safe that they became sloppy. Mark came in Tuesday evening, smelling of expensive bourbon and Ava's perfume. He didn't even pretend to be sad anymore. He sat in the chair by the window, scrolling through a real estate app, looking at villas in the south of France. Villas he planned to buy with my liquidated stocks. "You know, Sarah," he said, not even looking at me, "Ava thinks we should keep the Greenwich house, but I think it has too much of your energy. I'm thinking of something more modern, glass walls, somewhere we can see the ocean. I think I'll name the guest house after you, a little tribute to the woman who made it all possible." I didn't answer. I just let a single, well-timed tear roll down my cheek. It wasn't out of sadness. It was out of pure, concentrated hatred. He thought he was being poetic, but he was just giving me more rope to hang him with. Then Ava walked in. She was wearing my favorite Chanel scarf, the one Julian had bought me for my 40th birthday. She leaned over me, her face just inches from mine, and I could smell the saccharine sweetness of her lip gloss. "Oh, Sarah," she cooed, her voice dripping with fake pity. "You look so frail." "Don't worry, honey. Once the surgery is over, I'm going to take such good care of Mark. And Julian, too. He's been asking about you, but Mark told him you're too tired for visitors. It's better this way, don't you think? No long, messy goodbyes." She was isolating me from my own son. That was the moment I realized that simple financial ruin wouldn't be enough. I didn't just want their money, I wanted their souls. When they finally left, laughing about a dinner reservation they had at the most expensive steakhouse in town, I pulled the burner phone out. Nurse Maya was standing by the door, her face a mask of professional neutrality, but her eyes were burning with the same fire as mine. "Frank," I said, my voice cold and steady, "did you find the offshore transfers?" "I found them, Sarah," Frank replied, his voice crackling with a grim sort of satisfaction. "Mark didn't just move the inheritance. He's been using your electronic signature to bypass the two-factor authentication on your private trust. He's moved over $12 million into a shell company in the Caymans. But he made one fatal mistake. He used the same server he uses for his firm's daily backups. I've mapped every single transaction. I have the IP addresses. I have the timestamps. And most importantly, I have the logs of him accessing those accounts from your home office while you were in the ICU. Good, I whispered. Now, I need you to contact the chief of surgery, Dr. Sterling. She owes me a massive favor from that malpractice suit I won for her 5 years ago. Tell her the medical proxy Mark is carrying is a forgery, and tell her I need a very specific set of people in that operating room on Thursday morning, people who don't work for Mark Vance. The rest of the night was spent in a silent, calculating fever. I lay there, listening to the hospital breathe, thinking about the 10 years I had given that man. I thought about the proposals I'd written, the deals I'd salvaged, the nights I'd spent making him look like a genius while I stayed in the shadows. I had been the architect of his life, and now I was going to be the demolition crew. Wednesday morning brought a new level of audacity. Mark arrived with his personal lawyer and a notary. They wanted the signature for the voluntary organ donation. "It's now or never, Sarah," Mark said, his voice regaining that practiced, tender edge. "The doctors say Ava's levels are critical. If we don't do this tomorrow, she might not make it. Do this for family. Do this so your life means something." I looked at him, my eyes wide and watery. I can't see the lines, Mark. Everything is so blurry." "Just sign where I put your finger, honey," he urged, pushing the pen into my hand. I let my hand shake. I let the pen wobble. I signed the document, but I didn't sign the voluntary donation. I signed the confession of judgment that Frank had sent through Nurse Maya, a document that legally admitted Mark had stolen the $12 million and agreed to return it all, with interest, to a trust he could never touch. He was so eager to get the signature that he didn't even look at the fine print. He just snatched the paper away, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. "You've done a brave thing, Sarah," he said, kissing my forehead. I felt like I was being branded by a snake. As he walked out, clutching the folder like a winning lottery ticket, I looked at Maya. She gave me a tiny, sharp nod. The trap was set. The bait was taken. All that was left was the final act. I closed my eyes and let a real smile touch my lips for the first time. Thursday morning was coming, and Mark Vance was about to find out that the only thing more dangerous than a senior litigator in a courtroom is a senior litigator with nothing left to lose. Thursday morning arrived with a sky the color of a bruised plum. It was the day Mark and Ava believed would be the start of their reign, but for me, it was Judgment Day. I hadn't slept much the night before, not out of fear, but because of a cold, electric excitement surging through my veins. I had spent my entire life winning multi-million-dollar settlements, but there had never been a victory as sweet as the one about to unfold. At 5 a.m., Mark walked into my room with 2 medical orderlies. He was dressed as if he were headed to the most important contract signing of his life. A charcoal gray tailored suit, polished Oxfords, and a Rolex that glinted under the harsh fluorescent lights. He looked at me, a shell of a woman struggling to breathe under an oxygen mask, the way a liquidator looks at assets about to be auctioned off. "It's time, Sarah," he whispered, his voice carrying a fake sadness. I'm sure he'd practiced in the mirror all night. "Don't be afraid. When you wake up, all the pain will be gone. Ava will be saved, and you'll finally be at peace." I just looked at him, my eyes purposely glazed over from the light sedative Nurse Maya had swapped in. I wanted him to see my despair. I wanted him to feel like the absolute victor. They wheeled my gurney through the cold, echoing hallways of the hospital. The rhythmic clicking of the wheels on the marble floor sounded like the countdown of a death clock. In the bed next to me, Ava was already prepped. She looked at me with a smirk she didn't bother to hide. She was about to take my kidney, take my husband, and take my very life. "Thanks for the gift, cousin," she hissed as the 2 gurneys passed each other. "I promise to spend your money well." We were wheeled into operating room 4. The surgical lights were blinding. This was exactly where Mark had arranged for the accident to happen. He had bribed a surgeon named Dr. Miller to ensure I would never wake up. Mark stood in the observation gallery above, looking down with the eyes of a vulture waiting for a carcass to be served. But Mark had no idea that Dr. Miller wasn't there. In his place was Dr. Sterling, the woman who owed me her entire career, and a team of forensic physicians appointed by the FBI. "Commence anesthesia," a voice announced. That was the signal. The anesthesiologist placed the mask over my face. I closed my eyes, counting down, but instead of sinking into a deep sleep, I felt a surge of cold energy. I waited. I heard Mark talking on his phone from the observation room, his voice buzzing with adrenaline. "Do it," Mark commanded through the intercom. "Harvest the kidney and finish the rest. Make sure it looks like a cardiac complication. I want the death certificate signed as soon as Ava's transplant is complete." In that exact moment, I opened my eyes. I ripped the oxygen mask off and sat bolt upright on the operating table. The silence that hit the room was like a bomb going off. Up in the observation gallery, I saw Mark bolt to his feet, his phone slipping from his hand and cracking against the glass. His face transformed, shifting from a look of triumph to a shade of gray as pale as ash. "Good morning, Mark," I said, my voice echoing, sharp and surgical. "You were expecting a ghost, but it seems I'm not quite ready to vanish." The doors of the operating room burst open. Not with nurses, but with federal agents and Frank. They stormed the observation room, tackling Mark to the floor before he could even process what was happening. Ava, in the bed next to me, began to scream, a high-pitched, pathetic sound of pure terror. "Mark Vance, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and grand larceny." The FBI agent's voice boomed. I stepped down from the operating table, draping my surgical gown over my shoulders like a judge's robe. I looked up at Mark through the glass. He was being handcuffed, his eyes wide with horror and confusion. "You wanted to take my kidney to save your mistress, Mark?" I said, my lips curling into a cold smile. "Too bad I audited my life before you could. Every account you laundered, every signature you forged, and this very murder plot on this table. It was all recorded. I wasn't just the legal backbone of your company, Mark. I was the immune system. And today, I just rejected a virus." Ava was wailing, begging for mercy. But I didn't even look at her. She thought she could use my blood to fuel her luxury? No. The only thing she was receiving today was a permanent spot on the medical blacklist and a co-conspirator charge she couldn't outrun. Mark screamed my name, begging me to think of our 10 years of love. But I simply turned my back. That love died the second he handed me divorce papers in the ICU. "Surgery is canceled," I told Dr. Sterling. "I have a meeting with my legal team. It's time to reclaim the empire I accidentally built for a man who didn't deserve a single brick." I walked out of that operating room, feeling the first breath of clean air I'd had in months. Mark thought he could harvest me, but he forgot the most basic rule of law. Never sue a woman who knows exactly where you buried the bodies. This battle was just beginning, and I wouldn't stop until Mark Vance had nothing left but the orange jumpsuit he so rightfully earned. The weeks following the showdown in operating room 4 were not a time of rest for me. While my body was still recovering from the months of neglect and the trauma of the near execution, my mind was operating at a level I hadn't reached in a decade. They thought the arrest was the end. They thought they would post bail, hire high-priced lawyers with my money, and drag this out in the courts for years. They were wrong. I didn't just want them behind bars. I wanted to see the moment the light of hope died in their eyes. I moved my base of operations from the ICU to a private recovery suite that looked more like a high command center. Frank and his team of forensic accountants were there 16 hours a day. We weren't just looking at the $12 million Mark had stolen. We were looking at the last 10 years of every business entity he had ever touched. And what we found was a gold mine of filth. Mark hadn't just been unfaithful to me, he had been unfaithful to the IRS, his investors, and every board member who had ever trusted him. The first hearing was 2 weeks later. I insisted on being there in person. I arrived in a wheelchair pushed by Nurse Maya, wearing a charcoal gray suit that hung a bit loosely on my frame, but my eyes were as sharp as surgical steel. When they led Mark into the courtroom, he looked for his team of lawyers, the best money could buy. But as he sat down, he realized that the chair next to him was empty. I leaned forward, my voice a cold whisper that carried across the silent room. "Looking for your counsel, Mark. It's hard to pay a retainer when every single one of your offshore accounts has been frozen under a federal injunction. And that firm you thought you owned? I filed for emergency receivership this morning. As of 8 a.m., Mark Vance is no longer an officer of Vance Global. You don't have a lawyer because you don't have a cent to your name." The look of pure, unadulterated terror on his face was better than any medicine. He turned to look at Ava, who was sitting in the gallery in handcuffs, her face devoid of the expensive makeup and fillers she was so fond of. Without the treatments Mark was stealing my money for, she looked gray and desperate. "Sarah, please," Mark stammered, his voice cracking. "We can settle this. Think of Julian. Think of our son." "I am thinking of Julian," I replied, my voice gaining strength with every word. "I'm thinking of the father he thought he had versus the monster who tried to harvest his mother's life. Julian has already signed a deposition against you, Mark. He gave me the keys to your private safe in the Greenwich house. He's the one who found the recordings you kept of your planning sessions with Ava." The gavel hit the desk like a gunshot. The prosecution laid out the evidence, the forged medical proxy, the wire transfers, and the recorded conversations from the operating room. But the killing blow was the confession of judgment. Mark had signed while I was in the ICU. He had thought he was signing my death warrant, but he had actually signed a legal confession to 10 years of racketeering and grand larceny. "You didn't even read the fine print, did you, Mark?" I asked as he was led away to a high-security holding cell. "You were so eager to see me dead that you signed over your soul." The corporate purge followed. I didn't just fire Mark's loyalists. I dismantled their careers. Every partner who had laughed at his jokes while I was dying, every executive who had looked the other way while he funneled my money to Ava, they all received subpoenas. By the end of the month, the empire I had built for Mark was a smoking ruin, and I was the only person left standing with the keys to the vault. But I wasn't done. I had one more visit to make. I had Maya wheel me down to the prison infirmary, where Ava was being held while awaiting her own trial. She was hooked up to a dialysis machine, the very machine she had mocked me for. She looked at me with pure, concentrated hatred. "You think you won? I'm still alive, Sarah. I'll get a donor eventually." I smiled, a slow, predatory smile. Actually, Ava, I checked the National Registry this morning. Given your pending criminal charges for medical fraud and conspiracy to commit murder, you've been permanently blacklisted. No hospital in this country will touch you for a transplant. You wanted a life fueled by my blood. Now you'll spend whatever time you have left hooked to that machine, staring at the gray walls of a cell. It's a poetic kind of justice, don't you think? I left her there, her screams echoing down the hall. As I was wheeled out of the prison gates and into the fresh air, I felt the weight of 10 years finally lift. I was Sarah Vance. I was a litigator. I was a survivor. And I had finally finished the audit of my life. The books were balanced. The debts were paid. And the reckoning was complete. The gavel didn't just fall on Mark and Ava's freedom. It fell on the person I used to be. The legal massacre was over, but the reconstruction of my soul was just beginning. People often ask me if revenge tastes sweet. I tell them it doesn't taste like honey. It tastes like iron. It's heavy, it's cold, and it's permanent. After the final sentencing, 25 years for Mark, 15 for Ava, I returned to the Greenwich estate one last time. It was a tomb. The white lilies from our anniversary had long since rotted, their brown stems a grim reminder of the day the mask finally slipped. I walked through the rooms I had decorated, the hallways I had paid for, and I realized I didn't want any of it. Every corner held a whisper of a lie. Every piece of art was a trophy of a life built on a foundation of sand. I sat in Mark's office, the office where he had plotted my death, and I called Julian, my son, the boy who had been forced to grow up in the shadow of a monster. He walked in, looking so much like the man I once loved, but with eyes that held a depth of character Mark could never understand. "It's done, Julian," I said, sliding a folder across the desk. "I've liquidated the firm. I've sold the Greenwich house and the city apartments. Everything has been moved into a blind trust for your future, with one condition. A significant portion goes to the National Kidney Foundation and an advocacy group for victims of financial, elder, and medical abuse." Julian looked at the papers, then at me. "And what about you, Mom? Where are you going?" "I'm going to find the version of Sarah that existed before she thought she had to build empires for men who didn't deserve them," I told him. I sold every piece of jewelry Mark had ever given me. I sold the cars, the wine collection, the silk dresses. I kept only the small cottage in Maine, the one Mark had mockingly offered me in the ICU. He thought it was a consolation prize for a dying woman. He didn't realize it was the only place I ever felt truly at peace. A year later, I was sitting on the porch of that cottage, watching the Atlantic tide pull the shore back into the deep. My health had returned, thanks to the anonymous donor whose name I now know and whose family I support in secret. I don't wear diamonds anymore. I wear the salt of the sea air and the quiet of a conscience that is finally clear. Mark tried to contact me from prison. He sent letters filled with the same old charms, the same desperate gaslighting, claiming he was under Ava's spell and that he still loved me. I didn't read them. I didn't burn them. I simply handed them to Frank, who added them to the ongoing file of evidence for the civil suits. Mark Vance didn't deserve my anger anymore. He only deserved my silence. As for Ava, the news from the prison infirmary was grim. Without a donor and with her body rejecting the dialysis, Her time was running out. She sent a message through her lawyer, begging for my forgiveness, asking if I would use my influence to get her back on a transplant list. I replied with a single sentence: "The audit is closed, and the books are balanced." I looked out at the horizon, where the sky meets the ocean in a line so straight it looks like a ledger. I had spent 15 years litigating for others, building wealth for a man who wanted me dead, and fighting battles that weren't mine. But today, as the sun sets over the Maine coast, I realize I've won the only case that ever truly mattered. The ICU is a distant memory. The beep of the monitor has been replaced by the sound of the waves. The divorce wasn't the end of my life. It was the final necessary surgery to remove a parasite. I am Sarah Vance. I am healthy. I am free. And for the first time in my life, I don't need a courtroom to know that justice has been served. My name is Sarah, and this was The Reckoning. They say that money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy a clean audit of the soul. Sarah Vance lost an empire, a husband, and a cousin, but she gained back the one thing Mark could never truly steal: her power. Mark Vance and Ava thought they were the smartest people in the room. They thought a hospital bed was a place of weakness. They learned the hard way that a warden is most dangerous when she has nothing left to lose. But as you sit at your own table tonight, look at the people around you. Do you truly know them? Or are they just waiting for the right moment to hand you a black leather folder? This has been The Dinner Table Truth. If you enjoyed this 60-minute journey into betrayal and ultimate justice, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to fight back. Until next time, keep your secrets close, your enemies closer, and your heart under your own lock and key. Thank you for listening.